Hey guys, Mike here. So, oh boy, woo! Let's give it to, oh boy. I mean, oh my goodness. Did you see the market today? It was such a crazy day, and how one stock can shift an entire market is insane, by the way. But the QQQ and the SPY literally had their best day in the last year. I couldn't believe that because we had November. Remember November days when we were short covering and all that good stuff? No. The NASDAQ 100 was up over 3% at one time. The SPY is up over 2%. And for the S&P to be up over 2%, that is crazy, man. That really is off of one earnings report. And I'm going to show you some stocks. What's crazier is they didn't even report earnings, and they did twice as good as Nvidia. It was just nuts. And I'm also going to give you an interview with somebody when it comes to Nvidia about the earnings, things, that stuff they're looking for, and everything. And because they've been spot on about Nvidia for quite a while now, actually. But I do want to start off this right. And I got a lot of you guys asked about SMCI, right, and Nvidia and AMD and all that stuff. I need you to understand what truly is behind SMCI. You might have noticed it did twice as good as Nvidia today, and it didn't report earnings. Remember, it already reported earnings. Okay. So why did it do that? Why is its stock price higher than Nvidia right now? Okay, so I'm going to explain to you why that is. I will start off with an apology, though. I'm a big enough man to admit it. I rag on Jim Cramer, but I'll say this. The man did say ahead of Nvidia earnings that the AI giant isn't anywhere near its peak. So deuces to you, Jim Cramer, all right? I thought for sure you had doomed this stock. Please let me know I'm not alone in that. I thought for sure he had doomed it. And boy, you saw price upgrades out the wazoo come out immediately this morning. I mean, look at all those price upgrades. Holy cow. All the big boys, the ones you never heard of, they all came running out with price upgrades. So, of course, that's always good for the stock. Now, Nvidia obviously still within its weekly range. You see the weekly range is really far up there, right? Huge gap up, all-time new highs. All-time new highs, right? And you can see on the weekly, that's the all-time new highs again. But here's the question. This is what we got to look at. The last two earnings. Not counting this one, right? It blew out earnings. It hung the moon. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. But what happened? Huge pop, big drop. Okay? That was the one before this one. And then the one before that one, same thing. Big pop, big drop, pop, drop again. Okay? So that's what we got to figure out. All right? And that was the previous all-time high right there. And then we finally ended up breaking out of some consolidation. So we got to see. We're going to continue to move up. Again, there's no resistance above us, right? But, you know, will we get a drop or not? That's the big question. Again, we are in that seasonality crazy, you know, type of year, whatever it is in February, March, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so we're going to get to see on that one. Again, your weekly moves like 809 is the top right there. We're definitely not coming down at the bottom. That's for sure. And so, you know, we'll mark this out because this right here was the previous all-time high where it was buttoned up against and then sold off. And so, note to everyone out there, make sure you always remember that. A stock that is moving up hard into earnings is not a good thing most of the time. A stock moving down into earnings, it was down 10% over the last 3 days, is a good thing. Okay, because if you miss it, you're not going to get punished too hard versus if you hit it, you're going to be rewarded even more. All right, now, if you look right here on AMD, what were they doing? Wedging, right? They just kept wedging, wouldn't break that trend line, wouldn't let it break the trend line to save their life, save its life, right? Nvidia reports, bam. AMD ends up going up almost the same percent. AMD ends up going up almost the same percent as Nvidia, but it did not break its previous all-time high. So that is the level we will be watching for. Is the previous all-time high was around 184 and some change, and so watch for that level to break. Last time, 184.94. Last time, obviously, when it broke its previous all-time high, it went up a little bit, came back down, retested, which is what you want to see. All right, and it retested that old previous all-time high multiple times, right? And that is a good thing. That is turning into good support, and you saw it hold. So let's see what happens tomorrow if we break that finally, come back down and retest. Now here's SMCI. I told you guys, what was it, last week or something, or maybe the weekend. You come down to this level, do not be surprised if you get a bounce because there is some support there, right? And so it, of course, has bounced, especially on Nvidia. We got a small bounce even before the earnings, but of course, this thing comes out, it's up like 37% today or some crazy mess, okay? And you have to understand why. But understand, if this sells down, what does it love to do? This thing loves to fill gaps to the penny, right? Filled a gap there, the penny, drop down to that gap, filled it, drop down to that gap, filled it. And so it loves to fill gaps. So if this drops down, mark out this previous gap or this big gap, mark that out. Okay, that's what you got to mark out. Not saying it's not going to go higher. I'm saying if it comes back down, because you see how it's filling these RTH gaps and just popping every single time, that's what you're looking for. The big question is, you're probably be asking this, I get it all the time. Why is this one doing double what freaking Nvidia did? Look at that. Why is it double? It's more than double Nvidia did. Nvidia is the one that reported earnings that hung the moon, right? It is this right here, guys. Do not miss this and understand this very clearly. And guys, before we continue, if you could hit that like button for me, I sure would appreciate it. It helps people find this video and everything. And also, if you like the content, think about subscribing, guys. Here is SMCI, super microcomputer. Look, and I'm going to zoom in on this for you. Shares outstanding and the float. It is minute, okay? Minute. This is the latest data I have on this. I don't believe that short float is correct anymore, but 52 million shares outstanding, 47.5 million float. You may think that's big. Here is Nvidia, okay, the king. Look at the shares outstanding on this puppy. 2.47 billion. The float is 2.37 billion. AMD. All right, let's look at this one. Look at the shares outstanding on this puppy. 1.62 billion. The float is 1.6 billion. But not only that, you have to come over to the market cap and say, well, wait a minute. What's the market cap of SMCI? It is tiny. It doesn't seem like this now that it's blown up. Okay, is it 55 billion? And I know that sounds gigantic. Okay, and it is, but and this is why they won't be in the Russell 2000 anymore. Coming up here soon. AMD semiconductor, $295 billion market cap. Okay, versus 55 billion. And then look at Nvidia. Almost, it will be, I'm sure soon, $2 trillion market cap. And so that is why you're seeing traders play SMCI like a fiddle and making a killing on it. Okay, that is why you're seeing. That's why it can be pushed up and pushed down like it is, right? I mean, imagine that. And so imagine this. They even put out, I think it was like 1.5 billion or some crazy mess. Of a debt offering. I think it was convertible bonds or something like that. Didn't phase it. It went up even more after that. Okay, and so again, this is a trader's dream. Like traders are just moving this thing up and down, selling. And so, we'll see if they keep pushing this thing, but that's the difference in why this thing is doing what it's doing versus AMD and Nvidia. That's what's happening. Okay, now I don't believe this one's taking away money from AMD or Nvidia because they're moving up nicely too, right? And we'll get into like why is certain stocks not moving, okay, versus these stocks and stuff, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But that leads me into Dan Niles. Some people like him, some people don't. I don't really care if you like him or not. But he's been on top of this Nvidia thing for a while. He's pretty open and honest on Twitter about what he's doing in his moves, whether they're bad or good, right? But he does make some very interesting points, and especially pay attention to the very second clip on this. I've shortened it down a lot from like an hour long to like 2 minutes. All right, so pay close attention to this.
The answer is yes and no. And what I mean by that is the following. We had all heard about lead times coming down. And what that means is you order a chip, when do you get it? 3 months ago, you ordered their highest end chip. You got it a year from now. 3 months later, you order their high-end chip. You can get it in 3 to 4 months. And typically with semiconductor companies, that's never a good thing, because it means a combination of supply ramping up or demand not being as strong as it was before. What happened was when they put out the release, they actually came in a little light of the whisper numbers in terms of the guidance. They guided to 24 billion. Most people have been thinking they would guide to 25 to 26 billion. So that looks light, and the stock was down, a few percentage points in the aftermarket. And then the commentary came out that China was down substantially. And that's important because that was one of the issues that I think all of us who like NVIDIA and who believe in the AI revolution were worried about, because that demand was sort of pulled forward because the Chinese were so worried about getting chips cut off. And demand from China went from a 22% roughly of revenues in the prior quarter, October, to about 5%. Mm-hmm. January quarter. And that's when the stock started to rip, because we all looked at that and said, okay, one of the two big risks that we had is now off the table, because they reported strong results. They got it below the street, but now China's down to 5% of revenues. We can believe that. And that kind of de-risks that part of the story. And the stock is still incredibly cheap at a mid-30s PE. And even after this move, right, because the estimates go up so much, it's still incredibly cheap. And to put it in perspective, because, I lived through the 2000 bubble, Cisco back then, which was the most valuable company in the world for a period of time back in March of 2000, when it got to that level, it was trading at a PE of about 135 times on about 60% revenue growth. Nvidia is growing revenues at, I think the numbers are up to about almost 90%, but the PE is 35 times. But, I think the key is, I always think back to 2000, and that bubble lasted longer than any of us imagined possible. And the famous one is Alan Greenspan saying irrational exuberance about the market. The thing people forget is he said it in 1996, and the S&P almost doubled over the course of the next 4 years. So, bubbles can last longer than you ever imagined. And from a time perspective, ChatGPT only showed up in November of 2022. So it's hard to imagine that just in a year and a quarter, let's say, that you've seen all the bubble building involved in that. And that's why I when you marry that with a PE in the mid-30s for Nvidia, that's why I think, you can stay with this for a while longer. But don't get me wrong, the fact that the lead times have come down from about a year to 3 to 4 months, it's something I'm really watching, because you've seen this for every other semiconductor company over the course of the last 18 months, is that when that happened, all of these double and triple orders left over from COVID evaporated, and you ended up with massive guide downs. What saved a lot of these companies is then you had the AI hype kick in, and I shouldn't say hype, but you had the AI revolution kick in at the end, beginning of 2023, and that sort of powered these companies higher, regardless of whether they lived up to the potential like an Nvidia, or they ended up missing numbers. Because don't forget, every stock has gone up to some degree that's around the AI trade. I mean, AMD guided below the street for their March quarter. The stock is still up big this year.
And I hope you got the part about the bubble, okay, and the Cisco reference and all this stuff. Yes, and here's the thing. Here's why I agree with them on the bubble. Doesn't mean these stocks aren't going to sell down. Okay, you saw it on SMCI. We've seen Nvidia pull back, all this stuff. Doesn't mean that's not going to happen. The markets are going to pull back. They're going to have a 5 to 10% pullback at some point in time, 3% pullbacks, all this stuff. That's going to happen. But think about, what has Nvidia not done yet that's going to become, it's coming, right? Can you guess what they're going to do to get even more buyers in on it? Come on, think about it. Put in the comments, what are they going to do? They're going to do a stock split. They're going to do a stock split. Think about Tesla. When Tesla started roaring in 2020, in 2021, how long did you hear about it? Man, this thing is going to crash and burn. It's going to crash and burn. You heard it every single day, right? But what they keep doing to keep people flooding in? They did not one, they did 2 stock splits, okay? And it was, I forgot what the numbers were they were at when they did them. But that's how you get buyers keep coming in. That's what happens, because people go, I'm not buying at 800, but all of a sudden they do 3 for 1. Something like that maybe, and all of a sudden it's whatever, I don't know, the math real quick, 250. People come in. If they do 4 for 1, whoa, people go, oh, I'm in. They just see the stock price, right? They start roaring in, and the people already have the shares, have more shares now, right? And so that has not been done yet, and that's going to be the interesting flashing point to see. And that's why I think they still have room, whether it's AI bubble, pump, whatever we want to call it, okay? Whatever we want to call it. I mean, trust me, I don't have this freaking. I got a feeling I'm going to have this going on for a long time. Somebody actually noticed I put Nvidia on this pump. Pump. Yeah, I need to put SMCI on there, I guess. But, yes, this is what's going on. And it's weird, because you always hear semiconductors are cyclical. You always hear that, right? Where companies, they're order, and then they're done ordering for a long period of time or something, right? And you get through these cycles. That's going to be the interesting part, to see what happens. And again, it's like AI is new. AI has been around for a while. But the big part is, how many of these companies are going to be able to monetize, and how long is that going to take? It's great to buy these expensive chips, but you got to make money off the chips, and those chips are expensive. That's why Nvidia is making a killing, right? And so, getting on to others, like, for example, a Tesla, which, by the way, really didn't do much because this thing was down, right? When everything else was up, the freaking Qs were up over 2% and Tesla was red. And it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? It finally caught a bid, went up like 1-2%, nothing major, didn't even get past prior day's high. And when you look at it, it's still in this channel and everything. So nothing much to report there on this one. But the one reason I think you're seeing is it isn't just Tesla. You look at the other EVs, I mean, Rivian crushed on earnings, Lucid crushed on earnings. Why? Well, because everybody's talking about demand. That's the big thing. Everybody's talking about demand right now. And so it's like in demand, they're worried about demand, they're worried about China slowing down, they're worried about all this stuff. And so when that happens, people look at sectors, especially big money, and goes, well, why would I risk my money in that when I can just go over here to these kind of stocks, right? With semiconductors, which are just on fire, continue to pump, right? Or I can go over here and put it into software companies, or even get now these cybersecurity companies on sale right now. It might even be even more on sale when CrowdStrike reports, because remember what Palo Alto will do. And again, we talked about it. I don't know if the 3 to 5 day rule is going to hold up. So far, it's holding up right now. But again, $100 a share down on this thing. And so the truth is, I think CrowdStrike shareholders actually got a break because they got the pullback, right? So now going into earnings, unless they do some crazy run up into earnings, they're already at a discount now, right? So if they don't hang the moon, they're not going to get punished as much as Palo Alto, most likely, because they were selling down, right? And so, but again, a lot is priced in to these kind of stocks, right? And so we'll see how they do. Maybe they won't have the same problem. Maybe it's a Palo Alto problem and stuff. And so again, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think about all this stuff that's going on and stuff. What's your prediction? Like, what are you predicting for Nvidia over the next 6 months? SMCI to hit, that kind of stuff. And so it seems like they're definitely heading for at least 1,000 to 1,200, somewhere in there at some point in time this year. But we'll find out and everything. So anyway, hope you guys got something out of it. Hit the like and subscribe button on your way out. Really appreciate it, guys. And I will see you tomorrow to finish up the week. And by the way, put your questions in the comments for Saturday's video, and I'll answer them for you, okay? Have a good one.